I know it's tougher for some of you than others. There we go. There, will you just double check that I am on the camera? All right, thank you for that encouraging thumbs up.
Actually, raise it a little bit.
Is it better if I do my half thumbs up?
Maybe I should have David the
You
professional. We should have
good.
David cite me in. All right, first of all, I just want to thank you guys all for willingly choosing to be at my speech. I really appreciate that you guys are here. Before we get started, I just want to let you know this is going to be a speech about video games, and I am a self-confessed video game fan, so I just want to full disclosure up front. I remember pre-ordering video games because I knew I had to have it the first day that they came out. I remember one game in particular, it came out and I wasn't allowed to stay up past about 11, and so I remember that night waiting until my parents went to sleep and then waking back up so I could play the game until early in the morning. Yeah, I know, I'm a horrible person. Let's see, I remember being at school the next day, not even be able to stay awake because I stayed up all night playing video games. That story, those don't sound very harmful. Staying up too late, being excited about a video game, spending lots of money on video games, not really too bad. There's been some pretty nasty examples of video games kind of gone awry. There's a story out of South Korea where a man collapsed after playing a video game for 50 consecutive hours. He was in a video game cafe and played for 50 consecutive hours and collapsed. There's a story of a man in China that played video games for 15 consecutive days until he died. He played until he physically died in his apartment. There's stories that have happened in, I know maybe these are some of your friends, I don't know. There's stories that have happened in America about students or young people that have physically attacked their own parents because they've either taken away